Welcome back to the Mountain Medical YouTube channel. Thanks for hanging out. In today's video, we're going to talk about one of the most interesting people that I've ever met in my life. This is an interview with Robert Dittman. He is a U.S. Marine and he's been blind since birth. He has some very interesting philosophies that I think we could all take away from. So hang out. Let's get into that next. All right, before we get into this video, do me a huge favor. Go down below, hit that like and subscribe button. That's a free way to support me here at the Mountain Man Medical YouTube channel. So if you learned something, you got something from this video, that's a free way to support me. If you need a trauma kit or you need to learn more about trauma medicine, head over to mountainmanmedical.com and check out our Yellowstone and Wind River trauma kits.
It was good to meet with you and tell some sea stories. I've been blind since birth. I have a condition called retinopathy of prematurity. 27 years in uniform. I've had the privilege of serving this country as what they call an auxiliarist. So I'm a member of a community emergency response team. I did take your excellent, I'm going to get this wrong, emergency trauma response course. Is that the one that you have online at Mountain Man Medical? My other experience was I had the privilege of serving with the Marines for 2 years as an honorary U.S. Marine with Echo Company 4th Reconnaissance Battalion. But I must state that I am not a recon Marine. I was part of the INI. So that was awesome. They were good guys. When I was with Echo Company with my brother, so my brother was a corporal at the time, and I was an honorary lance corporal. The first sergeant of Echo Company would, you know, when you're running around, of course, everyone's got their things to do and that sort of thing. And I didn't have a lot to do, but I said, is there something I can do? So I volunteered for CQ duty. And, you know, I'm in there field stripping and cleaning weapons. You have no idea how absolutely amazing it is for me as an honorary Marine to be able to clean my brother Marine's weapons. It was something I could do. It was something I could do well. It field strip the M16 platform, get it done. And the next day, the first sergeant basically said, I'll never forget it. I wish I knew his name. He was an African-American. This is about 2000. If someone could track him down, that'd be great. But he said, today you shoot for this Marine. You spent all night cleaning your weapons, and today you're shooting for him. And to have that type of affirmation that even though I'm blind, even though I'm an honorary Marine, and I mean, I love the Corps as much as the next Marine, I really do. But to be able to receive that type of, that's worth more than any medal that I could have received.
What an excellent story. You know, my time with the Marines, you know, I definitely have different times in my own experience that really means something to me, that when I tell those stories, that I feel very similar to the way Robert feels when he tells that story. You know, that was something that meant something very deep to him and affected him throughout the rest of his life. So absolutely fascinating. Next, he starts talking about the rest of his training and more of his military career.
Search and rescue training, hazmat training, bloodborne pathogens, all that stuff. And then with the Coast Guard, one of my current assignments, in addition to me being a JAG, is part of what they call an incident management team. And so you take hazardous material training and, of course, mass cav and all these different things. So it's all great training. More specifically, in my opinion, everybody, regardless of whether you're in uniform or not, and regardless of whether you can see or not, should take this type of training. We definitely need it. As you're fond of saying, not everybody has to be the one carrying the weapon. I mean, I do carry a weapon, but I think equally, if you've got a holster on one hip and a trauma kit on the other, you're doing good. In the Coast Guard Auxiliary, I had the privilege of going through aircrew training. And so in that, the ASTC, Aviation Survival Technician. So those are the rescue swimmers, and great movie. Go see The Guardian. You'll love it. That's what these guys do. And the Navy and the Coast Guard and the Air Force have different versions of what these guys do. They're really amazing guys. Well, we had a couple of guys in my class. They were emotionally distressed. And that's a very normal thing. The chief said, look, you know, it is very normal for people to become emotionally distressed because you're upside down underwater in a harness and it's zero visibility. And he goes, none of you have any idea what it's like to be in total darkness and disoriented, do you? I raised my hand and he said, Mr. Dittman. And I went, Chief, welcome to my world. And he goes, oh, crud, I forgot you're blind.
So, hey, I think this is an important example for us to use in our own philosophy, in our own lives. Make our weaknesses our strengths. You know, he doesn't have the ability of sight, so he is so comfortable in the dark. He knows where his strengths lie, and he owns it, and he's happy about it, and he's comfortable with it. I love that aspect. I think we could all do more to be more like that. Next, we started talking a little bit about the medical aspect, about being blind, and then also being able to provide care for somebody in an emergency situation. You know, obviously, Robert is a warrior. He wants to be able to help out. In an emergency, he's going to be doing everything that he can. Everybody else is going to be running away from the situation, but Robert, even though he's blind, he's probably going to be trying to help out in some capacity because that's just the type of person that he is. So we started talking a little bit about medical. What can we do to help teach blind people trauma medicine so that they can take care of themselves if they get injured, or if somebody is around them, they have the knowledge in their head and potentially the stuff to take care of somebody. I think that is a fantastic idea. I know if I were to lose my eyesight, that's how I would want to be. I'm going to try to be as strong as possible. Even if I have a large weakness, that's okay. I'm going to still work my way through that, and seeing that Robert approaches life in that same way helps to inspire me. Love it.
I mean, I love the way your kits are. I know it's not an advertisement, but I'll just give it to you from my perspective. I love the way these kits are laid out, because I have a Marine Corps issue individual first aid kit, and everything is kind of shrink wrapped, and you can't really know where anything is, at least in these kits. I mean, when you open it up, so I'll give this to you from a blind perspective. So for those who can't see, I have it on my lap, and it's opened up like a book, and I don't know whether that's the proper way or not. So we've got, shears on the left, we've got a magic marker, we've got, looks like a pair of gloves, 2 pairs of gloves. It's knowing what stuff feels like. And in fact, I mean, you could even braille this stuff if you wanted to.
It puts things into a whole new perspective for me. And I love talking to people that help me see the world a little bit differently. Love it. And he definitely does. Next in this clip, we're going to see him talk about an ambition of his to teach other blind people how to shoot. It's pretty fascinating. I think it's an incredible idea. You're just going to have to hear him out.
So my wife and I started a business called Blind Shooting LLC. Actually, specifically my wife and my captain and I. It was a challenge for me to find an instructor that would allow me to complete the course of fire. While I understand that people can be skeptical, a healthy skepticism is okay. What is not okay is willful opposition. I get everything all across the spectrum, and I understand that, from this is amazing and we should do it and there should be no restrictions, okay, to oh my god, you're absolutely crazy, no way you should be anywhere near a firearm. And in the 2A community, I think that's a cross section of the community as a whole, or even Americans as a whole. You would understand this. So a lot of people say, well, why don't you just use a stun gun? Well, as you may know, civilian stun guns, not talking law enforcement, but they will probably not be effective unless they make contact with skin. So they're not going to go between jackets, especially leather jackets, and then go through like 2-3 layers of clothing. So that's going to be a problem. And then someone said, well, why don't you use a knife? Well, there again, you have to get real up close and personal, but it's very different and much more effective if you're using a firearm appropriately and responsibly. And my class basically teaches them how to do that. I don't teach close quarters combat techniques. That's not what I do. But what I do teach is, presentation, fundamentals, firearm safety, things like that, and how a scenario would go. Unfortunately, I have a friend of mine who was mugged. I was unfortunately assaulted in 2008, which was not pleasant. It did not involve a firearm, and my friend did not involve a firearm, but it got me thinking. God forbid this happens again. I don't want to be on the wrong end.
Again, this is one of those areas where I put myself in his shoes. If I was blind and I have been attacked before in the past and I'm in fear for my safety and the safety of my loved ones, I'm going to want to take care of myself too. So when it comes down to blind people shooting guns for self-defense, I mean, I'm not a firearms instructor. I don't pretend to be. So I think that is a conversation for people who have a greater expertise in that field than I do. I don't teach firearms instruction. A lot of other people would have better information on that from me. But I do know that he has a right to defend his own life. Everybody else has got a gun, and you're a blind guy, but you're not allowed to have a gun. I mean, that's that's a rough way to have to be, right? Next, Robert talks about his philosophies around his usefulness in an emergency, which I think is fascinating. I love his take on this, and I think you should pay close attention.
When you sit through medicine classes, I thought the only thing I could do was store the information in my head and relay it to somebody who could see. And while that's true and that's important, and that may be the best thing you can do on scene, if you've got someone with a pair of eyeballs that work and you can say, okay, I have this information in my head, let me tell you what's going on. That's important. What I noticed about most of these situations is people panic. And one of the things we learn in the service is, I remember I had a instructor tell me once, if you can think, you can act. If you can act, you can stay alive, but you got to do it in that order. You know, they're like, I didn't think, I just act. No, that doesn't work. You have to think, and then you can act, and then you can, move on from there. But you have to, the trick is lessening the act, or lessening the distance between thinking and acting, and training and repetitive training is what's going to lessen that gap. And as a blind person, I mean, generally, you have to have situation awareness. I mean, every day is a high stress environment. I mean, every time you cross the street, whether you're a dog guide user, whether you're a cane user, there's the opportunity of being killed, which is an interesting way of putting it, but that's the truth. So situational awareness tends to be heightened in the blind community. What I would also say is, okay, get past the self-doubt. Some blind people, so there's a spectrum. You've got people like me. I'm 10 foot tall, I'm bulletproof, I can do this, whether I can do it or not. I mean, now obviously I've gotten older, so I don't, you never want to put yourself needlessly at risk. That's not what I'm advocating for. Provided that the blind person is confident and competent and has the training, they might have an edge because everybody else is panicking. As you well know, 70% of communication is done through the eyes. Sighted people rely on their vision a lot. Whereas me, I don't care. I walk in the room, lights off, go make a sandwich, not a big deal. Functioning in my world, not a big deal. Whereas, sighted people are bumping around, they're feeling stuff, they're stubbing their toes. I'm like, what's wrong? What, are you blind? I often quip that sighted people, which is the acceptable term, suffer from the disability of light dependency. If you can come into a situation and save a life, okay, that... Again, in a low light environment or a no visibility environment, or even just an emergency, if you have the knowledge and sighted people don't, then you're not the disabled one anymore.
Love it. Absolutely love it. I love his philosophies. I love his thought process. I love his grit, his gusto, his enthusiasm. An excellent human being. I had a blast talking to him. If you want to learn more about Robert and all of his ambitions, I'm going to drop links to all of his stuff in the comments down below, or in the description down below, so that you can go and find him, follow his work, and let him know that you support him, or whatever the case is. So appreciate everybody sticking it out and checking out this video. Head over to mountainmanmedical.com, check out our Yellowstone and Wind River trauma kits. Be ready for whatever life throws at you. I'll catch you guys in the next one.